Orange, California.
Okay, can you guys on Facebook hear me?
No, I haven't seen it. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course. What do I do for fun? I don't know. I being silly, I guess. I mean, I watch a lot of comedy on YouTube and stuff like that. Yeah. No. I just moved here.
Oh, we'll have none of that. There you go. School first, okay? Cool.
Yeah, no friends over here yet. I just moved.
We're ready, sir.
Alrighty.
Yes.
Hello to the happy people here in the Inland Empire in Southern California. This is Biomed RX Radio. I am your host, Devin Lockett, and I have my lovely daughter, Katie, here as a co-host.
Hi there.
Good. Welcome, Katie. Thanks for coming back to the show. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Dave Seaver of Mind Alive Incorporated. Mind Alive is a company that produces brain entrainment devices, a very unique organization with some very interesting and high quality products. I actually have one on right now. I have the Mind Alive David Delight Pro, and I'm firing it up. This is a device that has cranial electrotherapy stimulation. This device actually helps to stimulate the production of endorphins in the brain, and it really does improve the quality of life and the quality of brain function. David, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing wonderful, thanks.
It's great to have you back on the show. We had you on one show before when it was only a half hour long, so we can cover a lot more this time. You know, when we started the Biomed RX Health Center, we started with neurofeedback. And last week we had Mr. Kurt Othmer on from the EEG Institute.
I know Kurt.
Yeah, Kurt's a good guy. And we discussed neurofeedback and the effects on the brain and the mind and quality of life. After doing neurofeedback for a couple of years, I was fortunate enough to discover CES and to discover your company. And I purchased one of your Mind Alive devices, the David Delight Pro, and as you know, became a distributor. And I've been satisfied with it ever since. I've been using it every day, right? My daughter and I both use it every day. And a number of my clients have had very, very positive results from it. Could you help my audience understand a little bit more about yourself, about Mind Alive, and about the devices that you produce?
Sure, yeah, thank you. I'm trained in electronics, and I do electronics design work, and I landed a job at the University of Alberta way back in the 80s to design a TMJ research lab. So we were, studying people with tense jaws and headaches and all that kind of stuff, and making splints that people would wear in their mouths, to try to balance their bite and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, I noticed we had an interesting demographic. So I did a really good intake because, the dentists, of course, see everything from a dental perspective. But I've always liked psychology, and I saw that there was a big psychological component that was playing out in our patient population. And so I did a really thorough intake, and I discovered that about pretty close to 90% of all of our patients were young moms, 1 or 2 toddlers, big mortgages, and wives of oil workers. And you'd think, why would a wife of an oil worker have a problem? Well, in the 80s, oil got as low as $12 a barrel. And most of these guys were very, very stressed out. And so on the life event scale, financial worries and increased arguments with the spouse were the two primary things that triggered TMJ tension and jaw pain.
Well, I imagine being married to somebody who refers to himself as a roughneck should be pretty stressful on its own, right?
Yeah, well, maybe, I don't know, possibly. Well, I would say that there's probably some truth to that, because a lot of them are not. They don't have careers. They're not very educated,
right?
And they're macho guys,
right.
And they want to have all their toys. You know, they want their Sea-Doo, their Ski-Doo, their boat, their guns, or whatever else they want to have. And in the 80s, because of a runaway real estate market in Ontario, the government at that time decided to push up interest rates to 18% to try and control inflation that happened in Ontario. Of course, we were all stuck with this 18% mortgages. And it's just not good when you're concerned about getting laid off from work, but you still want to buy a boat and a Ski-Doo and a Sea-Doo and whatever else. And a quad, of course.
Yes.
And so a lot of that came up in conversations with these young moms. And they were certainly very worried people, and therefore developed all this stress. And so anyway, during that time, I started designing a real low-speed 10 stimulator to relax the jaws, to at least get the muscles relaxed, so they would get a lot of the jaw pain down, and other things, biofeedback gear that would detect when they were grinding their teeth, things like this. And along with the research lab. And then in 1984, an instructor in performing arts asked me if I could develop this crazy new age, what I thought was probably a scam at the time, but a flashing light and sound device, and so he could help his students overcome stage fright. He had heard of this technique and other things he had been reading about, articles and stuff, and some studies, that it was pretty powerful as a hypnotic induction device, and that he wanted to hypnotically regress his students and to find out where their fears came from for performing on stage. And a lot of their fears turned out to be, elementary school Christmas play or something like that, and they forgot their lines, and they got all traumatized from being on stage forgetting their lines. And they were carrying that through still. So anyway, I built two devices, one for him, one for me. And I had a lot of anxiety, and I started to use it on myself. And it was really helping me deal with my anxiety from having a big mortgage, and the university did not pay technologists overly well. And then we started using it on our patients, and it was so effective. We used it on patients who had TMJ and neck and pain and headaches for 10 years or more. And inside of a 10-minute period, they were pain-free, and their jaws were completely relaxed. Completely. We put an EMG on their jaws, and it was completely relaxed.
Wow.
Never seen anything like it.
10 minutes. In 10 minutes.
So then I was convinced that there's way more science going on here. It's not just blinking lights are just not a new age scam or something like that. There's some real science here, and we just demonstrated that. So then we published that study, and then I thought I'm just going to start digging into all the research at the Health Sciences Library and the Medicine Library, basically at the University of Alberta. And yeah, I found a whole bunch of little studies here and there. It was discovered in 1934, the idea of driving brainwaves with flashing lights. Lots of little physiological studies were done involving thousands of people in the 40s and 50s. And in the 50s, though, a really interesting thing happened. There was a physician, a U.S. Military physician, and during the Second World War, named William Kroger, and it was his job to find out how come the Americans were driving battleships straight into enemy territory and suddenly getting shot at, and the same thing with bomber planes, and how come the radar guy never noticed? Well, they found out, these old-fashioned radars didn't hold an image like they do nowadays with a screen. So there's a little blip that goes on, a little bloop, 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 and that little blip was putting them into trance. And they were watching the enemy ships and stuff come right on screen, and they were just tranced right out and never did anything about it.
Wow.
So that got him pretty excited. So then he teamed up with Sidney Schneider in Ohio, and they built the first commercial brainwave machine called the Brainwave Synchronizer. And they published studies on using it for gastrointestinal surgery to reduce anesthesia, because in the 50s, if you had to get general anesthesia, you had a certain risk of dying. It wasn't nearly a science like it is now.
Yes.
And they found they could cut anesthesia in half if they used the gear at the same time they were getting surgery. There's several hypnosis studies spun out of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
One was a hypnotic study actually used in dentistry, and they found they could really reduce, again, the Novocaine for anesthesia that they use in dentistry, and control bleeding and other things all through hypnotic suggestion while they were flashing the lights in their eyes while they were getting dental work done. And having read that study in 1988, I quit using freezing when I went to the dentist and have not used freezing since, and I've had 2 crowns done, a root canal, I got 3 pins in one of my molars, and other various fillings. I got to say, my dentist is probably a little more gentle than he would normally be, but I'm almost entirely pain-free, and I often leave the dental office like I've been in the spa. I just am so relaxed and mellow.
So wait. You're telling me that you can go to the dentist using the flashing lights from brain entrainment, your brain entrainment devices, and get dental work without anesthesia?
Yeah, we even have a dental session on the gear.
That's incredible.
Yes, you can do it without. You feel a little pain here and there, but it's not bad.
Yeah, no, that's incredible.
It's pretty fleeting, but not having freezing is so nice.
Absolutely. Now, when you
come out relaxed too, that's the other bonus. You come out really relaxed, as if you say you had been to the spa for an hour.
Yes, is that the Delta relaxer setting?
No, I'm using faster frequencies. It's in the alpha band. It's slowed alpha. It's around 8.5 hertz or so.
Okay. Now, the flashing lights, is that the same as chromotherapy?
No.
It's not chromotherapy.
No, chromotherapy is all about color.
Okay. Now,
so we have a new machine that we're going to be introducing to the Syntonics people and all those who do color therapy, and chromotherapy, and you can select 1 million colors on it. And it runs off USB, and you can just put it on your computer, and you can just change the shades of all the lights. We just introduced that actually just last week. I debuted it at the conference.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to buy one and also put it on our website. By the way, I have to mention, you can find out more about Mr. Seaver and Mind Alive devices at mindalive.com. We're going to be back after these messages with more of Mr. David Seaver and Mind Alive on Biomed RX Radio. The Biomed RX Health Center provides high-tech, holistic, and alternative healthcare services, such as neural feedback or EEG biofeedback. Neural feedback is an electronic method of restoring the brain to its natural balance. It could be an effective support therapy for stress, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addictions, as well as learning and behavioral disorders. You want to check us out at biomedrxhealthcenter.com. That's biomedrxhealthcenter.com.
AM 590, The Answer.
We're back with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions on Biomed RX Radio. I am your host, Devin Lockett. I have my co-host, my daughter, Katie.
Hi, everyone.
And we're here talking to Mr. Dave Seaver of Mind Alive Incorporated about the brain entrainment devices produced at Mind Alive. I'm sorry to have interrupted you. We had to go to that commercial break, Dave. As you were saying?
Yes, I was just playing a little thing about the importance of keeping your brain stimulated. And anyway, it has to do with multiple sclerosis. And whenever, multiple sclerosis is the loss of myelination in the neurons and to the networks in the brain, and it's been found that you have to keep stimulated and keep action potentials flowing through the networks of your brain in order to activate the oligodendrocytes to myelinate. Those are the names of the cells in the glia that do myelination. Okay. Anyway, they need to see action potentials they don't myelinate, and of course, entrainment, I think part of the thing that works with our TBIs is entrainment is it's stimulating so much activity in the brain that it really fires up myelination. But I was just talking about the importance of always keeping active. Studies have shown that if animals are put in an enriched environment, their myelination in their brain goes way up. If they're put in a deprived environment, their myelination slowly strips away. And basically, they're kind of on the road to multiple sclerosis, right? MS is about loss of myelination. So I've just been looking at some research with sedentary lifestyles and what are the risks of developing MS, and they do go up.
Wow. So basically, boredom can literally kill your brain, or boredom can make your brain cells waste away if you're not.
Use it or lose it. Absolutely.
Use it or lose it.
So
yeah.
I do everything. I write, I do research, I do electronics, I bike, I cave, I climb.
Yes.
I scuba dive. I do everything. I ski.
Yeah.
I'm doing an awful lot of stuff. And I'm 61 years old, and I'm pretty darn active. So.
Wow. I honestly thought you were younger than me. And I'm not going to say my age, but I thought you were younger than me. And that's without saying my age.
Everybody thinks I'm like 45. That's usually what
absolutely. I that's what I thought. I thought you were maybe 43 at the most. I mean, that's pretty good. Dan.
Yeah. Well, and I act it too. I mean, I can give her good. I'm good. I'm a crazy dancer still.
Excellent.
And lots of good energy there.
I find a lot of synergy between physical exercise and study, and work, your ability to perform mentally. And also, when I'm back in school, I find that I'm more creative in other endeavors, right? I get more inspiration to write and to paint. And once you start exercising the mind, once you give your mind that constant stimulation, it's really good. Now,
you never know how it's going to do it either. Like I walk on railroad tracks, on rails. When I started doing that about 15 years ago, I would go about 10 feet and fall off. Now I can do about a quarter mile without falling off. But it's not just a balance thing, though. It really, really or what's the word? It really works on attention circuits.
Okay.
Has my attention improved greatly since I started walking on railroad tracks? So you lose your attention for just a split second, you fall off the rail.
Incredible.
And I really wonder if we were to put interesting little toys or things like that on a railroad track and said to ADHD children, if you can walk half a mile down that track or quarter mile down that track without falling off, you get the prize. I bet we could treat a lot of ADHD.
Wow.
You know,
you walk on the rail, just
on the rails.
Continuously?
Yep. Yeah. If you see my video, you'll actually see me playing guitar while I'm walking on the rails.
Now that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I got Dancing in the Dendrites video, and you'll see me walking on the rail while I'm playing the guitar. So, and that takes a lot of mental processing power. So, everything feeds on each other that you do, and you never know how else it'll apply somewhere else.
Yes. Now, as far as the Mind Alive devices, I'm wearing right now the Mind Alive David, the David Delight Pro. I actually only have the ear clips on, so I'm getting cranial electrotherapy stimulation, and that's good. It keeps the edge off when I'm broadcasting and keeps me from getting too nervous. And I don't think I'm saying as much as I usually would if I was sitting here on another day. But you were talking about I'm curious about the frequencies. How did you find the frequencies of the light flashing that you provide, and what are the concerns as far as people with epilepsy? Is there a chance that it might trigger a seizure, having the lights flashing, or does it just depend on the intensity of the light or the rhythm, or how does that work?
Right. Well, the frequencies are interesting. Generally speaking, entrainment is thought to be a frequency stimulating process. You put a frequency into the brain, and the brain will resonate with that frequency, and that's the whole concept of entrainment. But in the old days, when they did entrainment, they used square waves, which are they use strobe lights, like you see off of a flash camera.
Yes, either on or off.
Yeah, they flash very quickly and intensely, and they were using 40,000 lux or so, and they generated some pretty large potentials in the brain. Or responses that you could see quite easily on an EEG. But more recently, it's been found that although high-intensity square wave stimulation does seem to entrain the brain, it was found that if you actually slow the stimulation down, so the light turns on much more gradually and turns off more gradually, more like a sine wave.
Sinusoidal, yes, that's what I was thinking. It should be a sine wave, so you get the benefit of all of the intensities on the frequency band.
Well, sine waves only make one frequency, whereas square waves make a whole pile of frequencies. But it's been found that the square waves didn't really engage the thalamus, and the thalamus is a key structure. All our alpha waves come from the thalamus. If without the thalamus, the brain does not work. It just doesn't do anything. And that's what we're finding with these TBIs. They don't make alpha waves because the thalamus is taken offline. But that's a little bit of another topic. But so anyway, but we'll get to that. So anyway, so these we're using more like 600 lux instead of 50,000, and we're using more of a sine wave than a square wave. And so we don't see very much in terms of the frequency effect on an EEG, but we see other effects that are far more powerful. Of all the things that entrainment does, frequency is really the least of what it does once people started looking at everything it does. For instance, entrainment drives up cerebral blood flow exceptionally high. It drives up lactate, a really key, absolutely essential chemical in the brain. Without lactate, people have panic disorders, and the brain basically shuts down. And entrainment, a study with entrainment showed that it drove up lactate 250% in 3 minutes.
Wow.
Which is huge.
It is huge.
And I'm sure that's what's going on with all our brain injured people. They're low in lactate because they'll have panic disorders and stuff too, and entrainment settles that right down. But anyway, it also increases neurotransmitters. Like Sheely did a study at 10 hertz alpha band and found that serotonin went up 23%.
Wow.
And 70% of psychiatric disorders involve low levels of serotonin. Also, endorphins went up, as well as mild increases in norepinephrine, which is the brain's adrenaline. So it does those things. It also is profoundly relaxing to the body.
Yes,
so people get on entrainment, they just melt.
Yes.
And they also dissociate. And what I mean by dissociate is they lose all track of their thoughts in a meditative way. When good meditators meditate, they shut down all their thoughts, and they just blank out their mind. And when we work with people with PTSD, war vets, police officers and stuff, that's one of the first things that happens is within a few minutes they stop thinking. And we can measure the biofeedback monitors on their body, muscle tension, respiration, heart rate, all that stuff. And we can see that as they quit thinking about all the stuff that's causing them fear and anxiety, their body just melts into a deeply relaxed state.
Nice.
So those are some of the things that are going on. A more recent study with Alzheimer's mice found that Alzheimer's a lot of amyloid plaques in the brain. And what they did is they took the mice, and they took half the group of the mice, they put them in a box with a flashing light in the gamma band at 40, and then they put them in an MRI later that day, and compared to the control mice, they were 60% less amyloid deposits, and the microglia were really fat and full of amyloid. And flashing lights activated the microglia to gobble up all these amyloid deposits in the brain.
Incredible.
Nobody saw that coming, I can tell you.
Incredible.
Nobody saw that coming. So entrainment does all kinds of stuff that is really not frequency, has really nothing much to do with frequency. It's just the stimulation period does it. But in terms of seizure, the newer techniques certainly that we use, and we might be, I think, the only company, because we do so much research, we're probably the only company that doesn't use square waves. And it takes a lot more work to not make a square wave, because computer ports all make square waves.
Exactly. Digital
so it's easy
logic.
To tag a light. Yeah, it's a 1 or a 0, right?
Exactly.
And it's easy to tag a light to a 1 or a 0 and just have it come out as a square wave. To make a sine wave, we have to run it through a digital to analog converter.
That's what I was thinking, a DAC.
Like a CD player does, right? When your Nick plays music off of...
That's to bring it back to an analog form, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot more electronics and programming has to go into a device that can do different waveforms that are not square wave. But I've worked with quite a few people with seizure over the years, and of course I always working with the brain mapper on. We have a full head brain mapper, and we have treated a lot of seizure, and it's completely gone.
Wow.
After a month or so. One of the things about a lot of seizure, especially childhood trauma seizure, is that the cortisol from having childhood traumas, and we have a lot of clients with that, the cortisol damages the temporal lobes, especially the left side, and so you typically will see seizures showing up in the left side.
Yes.
And they're not a real seizure where there's actual physical symptoms so much.
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry, but time is flying again, man. We're having fun. We're coming up on the first half of our show, and we're going to be back with more of Dave Seaver and Mind Alive after these messages. This is Biomed RX Radio. Biomed RX Optimum Woman is the only woman's high-potency, full-spectrum, multiple vitamin supplement to contain 56 nutrients, including those most important for today's woman, such as calcium for bone health, iron for healthy red blood cells, beta-carotene, biotin for nail and hair health, gamma-linoleic acid from evening primrose oil, octosanol, grapeseed extract, a potent antioxidant, important for maintaining capillary strength, and vegetarian digestive enzymes. The Biomed RX line of vitamins, detoxifying products, and other supplements are made of only the highest quality, all-natural ingredients. We have supplements to fit every age, gender, and lifestyle, from children to adults to seniors to professional athletes. Biomed RX Supplements has what you need. Visit us online at www.biomedrxsupplements.com.
AM 590, The Answer.
We're back with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions at Biomed RX Radio. I am your host, Devin Lockett, and my lovely daughter, Katie. And we're talking to Mr. Dave Seaver from Mind Alive Incorporated about the Mind Alive brain entrainment devices that are in use at the Biomed RX Health Center. Just a little bit before we get back into the conversation, CES, or cranial electrotherapy stimulation, uses low-level electrical current to safely and effectively treat anxiety, depression, insomnia, and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. By attaching ear clips to your ears, small electrical pulses help your brain produce beneficial neurotransmitters. CES safely promotes brain health by gently helping your body produce serotonin, norepinephrine, and endorphins, which all increase relaxation and well-being. Backed by over 200 studies, this clinically proven innovative technology is used worldwide as a non-pharmaceutical approach to improving relaxation, mental health, sleep, and cognitive ability, as well as reducing aches, discomforts, and cravings. Explore the benefits of CES at the Biomed RX Health Center, located at 916 North Mountain Avenue, Suite D1. Upland, California 91786, or visit us online at www.biomedrxhealthcenter.com, or you can give us a call at 909-608-2880. Before the break, we were discussing seizures. Is that right, Mr. Seaver?
Correct. Yes, we were.
Yes, please continue.
As I was mentioning, children especially who have had traumas, it does show up in adults as well, but children really get affected by it. The cortisol damage to the left temporal lobes typically leave them firing off epileptiform pulses, which are what we would call sort of a pseudo seizure. They don't show symptoms. Sometimes I'll see their hand twitch when one of these spikes rolls down the EEG. I'll see a hand or a foot twitch at the same time when I'm brain mapping them. But the cortisol damage, unfortunately, they start having these odd, intense firings in their brain, sometimes 2 or 3 times a minute, and it kind of half wakes them up all night long, and then they're exhausted all the time, and they can't do anything in school when they're exhausted like that. And if they're deficient in vitamin D, it even makes it worse because vitamin D calms the brain down. It has been used quite a bit to treat this type of seizure. But what's going on, though, is because of the cortisol damage to their amygdala and hippocampus, temporal lobes areas, is that it becomes unstable and starts firing off these epileptiform discharges. But long as that keeps them in a stress state, which it usually does, because they're exhausted, they're not sleeping, they're anxious, and GABA receptors, which has a calming effect on the brain, they get stripped out because the brain wants to keep you on guard because it doesn't know something bad is going to happen to you. So they're always wound and they can't settle down.
Like fight or flight mode.
Yeah, they're always in flight or fight in a sense, and they can't settle it, which keeps the whole process going. And so we get them on entrainment, and I typically will watch them on the brain mapper to make sure it doesn't trigger any kind of a bigger seizure, but I've never seen it, never yet. That's one of the beauties of using non-square waves, is that the odds of triggering a seizure with a sine wave is almost impossible. Even in hardcore epileptics, it's almost impossible. But anyway, we just get them really, really calm and relaxed. They start sleeping better. And typically over a few months, their seizure activity disappears.
Wow. Now, I'm going to give one of my own hacks. I don't know. I'd like to get your feedback because I don't think I've mentioned this to you. You know, I like to use the David Delight Pro immediately before doing a session of neurofeedback. And, you know, I've already gone through a phase of infralow and now I'm at high frequency gamma band synchrony training. I'm at 42 hertz, I believe, or 42.5. And I also like, before doing my entrainment with the David, having a cocktail of colloidal silver and DMSO. And I find that my experience is much, much more intense after drinking that. Have you had any experience with these, or is it possibly that the colloidal silver increases the conductivity of the blood and may have something to do with aiding the CES?
No, I would think the colloidal silver would have no effect at all.
Okay.
And there's quite a few neurofeedback practitioners who use entrainment prior to doing neurofeedback, because most neurofeedback is done on people who are hypoperfused with cerebral blood flow. You know, they have slow brain waves, they're ADD, they're depressed, they're cognitive decline, they're brain injured or whatever, and they have low levels of cerebral blood flow. Even forms of anxiety are that type. And so entrainment increases all of that, plus the neurotransmitters. And in every single case that I have brain mapped, before and after, entrainment always normalizes the brain waves to the standard population. So what I'm saying, when we do a brain map, there's a database we can plug all the brain waves into, and there's several hundred people in the database who are supposedly very, very as normal as possible.
Okay.
And my clients always get way more normal after a half hour of entrainment. So if you're going to do neurofeedback, you're going to get through that neurofeedback way more effectively and way faster. And many clinicians say what might take normally 40 sessions of neurofeedback, if they use entrainment, especially take-home entrainment, they can cut that down to a half a dozen sessions of neurofeedback and have the same results and save them a few $1,000s in the process. Now, there is a type of TBI, which I'm calling a thalamocortical disconnect, and biofeedback will not work on it at all, because the thalamus is shut down, and you need entrainment to fire it back up. You can do neurofeedback after if you wish, but it's an absolute waste of time to try to do it prior to.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I've got a 90-minute video on YouTube that explains the whole thing, and I highlight a binge alcoholic, an anorexic, a lady 5 years post-car accident who could not work or clean up her home or anything. That was when I mentioned earlier, who 9 months later was not able to write a victim impact statement, not even the title, and 3 weeks of entrainment, she wrote a 15-page report.
That's incredible. You know, we have a number of peak performance clients at the Biomed RX Health Center. A lot of athletes come to us, and knowing this, I'm definitely going to talk to my football players, because they they not only need the peak performance of the brain entrainment, but they also suffer from traumatic brain injury pretty frequently.
Oh yeah. And one of the things that happens with this signature, symptomatically after a head injury, typically they develop anxiety, general anxiety. They develop obsessive compulsiveness that can be quite severe, and they immediately have a sleep disorder. Or within a month or two, they have a sleep disorder, and where they're only sleeping 3-4 hours a night, and it's not good sleep. And if that continues, it turns into either Alzheimer's or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So if you go to a doctor and you say, I don't know why I've got this, and you're filled with, and you have dementia and amyloid deposits, they'll call it Alzheimer's. But if you say, I got hit in the head, they'll call it CTE, even though they're absolutely the same condition. And but yeah, that's what we're really specializing in right now, is looking at this. On an EEG, it's a real flat-lined, low-voltage, flat-looking EEG, and there's no alpha waves. And the phase is really bad. The delta phase is bad because if you don't have the synchronization pulse in the thalamus, neurons fire off randomly in the delta band. And so we see a whole bunch of mess in the delta phase area, but also it starts to demyelinate because all these, there's millions of signals that are not happening every second, and so the oligodendrocytes start to stop myelinating, and we see incredible phase problems in the beta range where myelination has its biggest effect around 30 hertz.
So,
Big messes. So anyway, I've got all that documented, and the anorexic had a flu 2 years prior to becoming anorexic that triggered her brain dysfunction. Looks just the same as the person in a car accident.
wow.
No difference. And so we're finding all kinds of people that have these behaviors, especially the OCD, which shows up in the brain map, and they have Lyme disease, or they had mono, or they had something else, but they never had a head injury ever.
Now, we're discussing myelination and neuronal networks.
Yeah.
Does this mean that on, let's just say, someone with a, I guess you could say, neurotypical or a normal brain, I hate to use that word, that this type of entrainment is good for promoting neurodendritic plasticity?
Well, it's good for normal people as well as people struggling. Absolutely. I mean, we've got, look at our study. We did a study, Chris Palmquist did a study out of Saybrook University a few years ago in California, and she looked at a whole bunch of seniors. Average age was 68 years of age, and they were pretty functional for seniors. And after 1 month of entrainment, between doubling their memory and speeding up their brain waves, which had been slowing down, which is typical with age, they were brain age equivalent to 50-year-olds in 1 month.
Incredible.
Yep, and we see this with college students. We've got 3 college student studies right now, and they're all on our website. And as you, Katie probably knows right now, since she's in school, you know, at 9 o'clock, and when the teacher is telling you stuff, you might be able to remember it. But by time 11, you're having a hard time remembering facts, figures, and things.
Right.
Well, the study was done out of Germany on 78 college students, and that's exactly what they found. And when they did 2 memory tests, like 2 hours apart, the second memory test they did considerably worse than the first one. But if they used entrainment, their memory was remarkably better, way better than the first one even.
Incredible.
Yep, and
once again,
so was their concentration.
Yeah, thanks. Now, once again, we're coming up short on time. We have another break coming up, and we're going to be back after these messages with more very, very good information from Mr. Dave Seaver of Mind Alive Incorporated at Biomed RX Radio. The Biomed RX Health Center provides high-tech, holistic, and alternative healthcare services, such as biomagnetic pair therapy. Biomagnetic pair therapy uses pairs of permanent magnets to correct pH imbalances in the body caused by viruses, bacteria, fungus, parasites, toxins, and other pathogens. Please contact us at the Biomed RX Health Center at 909-608-2880. That's 909-608-2880.
AM 590. The Answer.
We're back with more high-tech holistic healthcare solutions at Biomed RX Radio. I'm your host, Devin Lockett, and my lovely daughter, Katie.
Hi, everyone.
And we're here interviewing Mr. Dave Seaver of Mind Alive Incorporated, and we're talking about the wonderful devices produced by Mind Alive. Just to give you guys, just to give them a plug right quick, if you're interested in learning more about Mr. Seaver and the Mind Alive products, you can find them at www.mindalive.com. That's www.mindalive.com. And if you wanted to purchase, you can purchase them at that site, or you can also purchase Mind Alive devices on our site, www.biomedrxsupplements.com. Now, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Seaver. Before we left for the break, we were talking about, I think it was, we weren't talking about seizures. What was the subject that you were talking about?
That's students and such.
Students, yes. Yes, yes. A number of my clients are peak performers, not only athletes but also students. And one particular student of mine, one particular client of mine, I won't mention her name because I didn't ask her permission beforehand. She ended up buying one of your devices as a result of having the entrainment at the Biomed RX Health Center. Can you tell us more about the benefits of Mind Alive devices and entrainment for students?
Oh, sure. Yes. We've had some fascinating research done on students, not only improving memory and concentration, almost with immediate results, but another study that was done by Tom Budzinski out of Seattle showed that they looked at struggling students who were getting tutoring and such because they weren't doing so well. And they found that when they were engaging their brains to do different mental tasks, their brain waves are actually slowing down, which is kind of like an ADD kind of an effect, although they weren't diagnosed with ADD, but definitely their brain was not performing well. And after 30 sessions of entrainment, it continued to run fast now when they did all these cognitive tasks. And then he looked at their grade point average against the control group, and after the course of 30 sessions, so he looked at the controls in them in the fall during mid grades or midterm exams, gave them 30 sessions, and then looked at their April grades on graduation, and the entrainment group was one GPA higher than the control.
Wow.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it is very huge.
And
that's
a lot of job
grade.
opportunities can spin from that, right?
Yes, an entire career can spin from that, or going on to graduate school can spin from that.
Now, worry is another problem with students. Students worry a lot, and that stress really can shut down their ability to perform and think and do good on exams and so on. And so the U of T in Austin, Texas, did a study where they were looking at trying to reduce worry, and they had different treatments that they use. Expressive writing is one of them. Worry exposure is another one that the psychology department uses for students struggling with worry. And they used entrainment as a placebo. And then when the study was done, they found out that entrainment reduced worry better than their other techniques by a fair bit. So they rewrote the study to make the entrainment a treatment condition because it would look foolish seeing a placebo outperforming treatment conditions. So they rewrote the study. So for boosting grades, relaxing a person, cutting back worry, entrainment works very well for that. Also, I was going to mention, too, on the athletic side, again, like say students can have issues, or again, like I said, we're finding quite a few people who've caught a flu or some kind of a virus, and then it shut their brain down just as if they had a head injury. And we have found that concussions are not caused actually by concussions. As weird as that sounds, they're actually caused, most people don't really show much of an effect from a concussion until a couple of months later, and it's caused by the inflammation. Not so much by the concussion. Most people with concussion go back to work 3-4 days later, and they're quite fine for a month or two. Then they start falling to pieces.
So it's the swelling.
And it's the shutdown of it's the thalamic shutdown that's causing it. And because it's inflammation, that's also why viruses can do exactly the same thing. And so anyway, getting back to that, so we've got several football players, some from pro teams, some hockey players from pro teams, and they're all have got drinking and pot smoking problems because they can't relax because they have severe anxiety, and the entrainment fixes that like right the same day, and they quit all their pot, they quit their drinking, and some football players have made significantly higher salaries as a result of playing a better game.
Thank you for telling me that. That's a good sell, especially with the athletes that we have around here.
Yep. On my lecture, the YouTube lecture I have, you'll see one case of a boy in grade I think it was grade 10 when I mapped him, and he had sustained a hockey concussion, and he went violent, and he kicked on the walls of his house. He beat up his brother one afternoon.
Oh, that's
threatened
terrible.
to kill some kids at school.
Complete personality change.
Complete change. He went from good grades to almost failing, despite a lot of push from his parents. He just barely passed, and nothing showed up on an MRI, which is typical. And I mapped him, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a pretty serious head injury." And we got him on the entrainment, and his grades improved so much that he qualified for the student exchange program, and he is in Germany right now.
So great.
That's good. That is really, really good that you were
And he
able
lost
to
all his violent tendencies, just disappeared right within a week or so.
Incredible. Now, how do you come up with the particular frequencies? I want to give a little bit of an insight as to the functions of the David and the other Mind Alive products. We have the flashing lights. We have sonic input, which comes from headphones, and we also have ear clips that give us the very small electrical pulse required for cranial electrotherapy stimulation. But I wanted to focus a little bit on the flashing lights. How do you come up with the frequencies? And from what I understand, there's a different frequency that's feeding into the left field of vision than in the right field of vision, understanding that both eyes speak to both hemispheres of the brain. But how did you come up with these frequencies? Are they the exact frequencies of the brain waves that you're trying to induce?
No, they aren't. They are to some degree. We follow the neurofeedback sort of concept, delta, theta, alpha, beta for the different brainwave frequencies. But some of the things are not. Like, for instance, this whole TBI stuff that I'm calling the thalamocortical disconnect, where they don't make alpha. Well, over the years, I've been trying to get their alpha up by stimulating them with alpha, and it never really worked. And it turns out it didn't work because they need to be stimulated very aggressively to get all those neurons to fire back up and reconnect. So we have found, quite by accident, that our SMR beta blend, which is randomized 12 to 15 on the left field and 19 to 21 on our right, it causes such a mishmash of all kinds of stimulation is going on. And typically at about 15 to 20 minutes, we will suddenly see their alpha waves kick back in, because the stimulation is so intense. So that was kind of by accident that we discovered that SMR beta, and even an alpha beta blend, if people have depression, we give them a little more alpha beta, will fire up an alpha wave, but alpha itself typically doesn't, because we're trying to flip a switch. So it's a little bit different than, I equate it to, if you have a light bulb in your room and you've got a light dimmer on the wall, and you can slide that dimmer switch up and down and make the light brighter or dimmer, and you can modulate it. But in this type of TBI, there's basically a switch in the line somewhere, so you can modulate your light dimmer all you want, and the light is always out until you flip the switch. And so we found that we needed much more intense stimulation to flip the switch. So it didn't follow the frequency model at all.
Okay.
In that particular case. Otherwise, for depression, one of the things that entrainment does, it inhibits the half frequency of stimulation. Sort of in the 12 to 20 hertz range, it will inhibit the half frequency.
But that's alpha, right?
ADHD kids make a lot of 6, 7, 8 hertz stimulation.
Delta.
Activity
theta.
that's abnormal high theta.
Mm-hmm.
And so by giving them frequencies in the 12 to 16 hertz range, we inhibit all those frequencies because they're the half frequency of that. So we just have to randomize it all between 12 and 16, and it will inhibit everything from 6 to 8.
Now, this is what you get from the ADD and learning setting, right? That's
ADD. Yeah, that's right. The light bulb section, and
light bulb
that's for seniors.
4. Yes.
Yep. And even for regular college students, it has worked remarkably well.
Yes.
For depression, you're looking at a little different situation. Typically, depression shows up as a big alpha hotspot on the left forehead, kind of above the left eye or at both the hairline. That's where the nucleus accumbens is.
Okay.
And that's your happy side of your brain. And if there's a lot of alpha there compared to the right, then that means it's idling. Your happy side is taking a rest. Because alpha is an idling rhythm, and so it's taking a rest, and the fear side on the right is much more active. And then you'll see an anxiety and depression as symptoms when you have that signature. So by giving them 20 hertz stimulation roughly on the right-hand side, we suppress that 10 hertz alpha on the depressed side, on the left side. And so we get that activated again by suppressing out that idling rhythm, that alpha. And we put 10 hertz on the left fields to settle down the right fear side. So we're boosting the happy side up or settling the fear side down.
That's wonderful.
And that's why we picked those frequencies for depression.
Excellent. Yes. Now, here we are coming up on the end of our show. If anyone is interested in trying this type of training, feel free to contact us at the Biomed RX Health Center at 909-608-2880. Thank you very much, Mr. David Seaver and of Mind Alive Incorporated. You can find them online at www.mindalive.com. We'll be back next week with more high-tech holistic health at Biomed RX Radio. Thank you. The Biomed RX Health Center is located at the corner of Foothill Boulevard and Mountain Avenue in the city of Upland in the Vanguard Center. We're at 916 North Mountain Avenue, Suite D1, the city of Upland, California, 91786. At this moment, we have a health fair happening right now and every Sunday from noon until 6 p.m. In front of the Biomed RX Health Center is called Holistic Health Sundays. So if you're behind the wheel and you're in the Inland Empire, feel free to swing by right now. We're there. We have vendors, holistic health practitioners, and suppliers at the fair. You want to check us out at www.biomedrxhealthcenter.com. That's biomedrxhealthcenter.com.